Speaking of the big bad, the next film on the list is nothing but a big bad. It is X-Men Apocalypse.
Doesn't it ever wake you up in the middle of the night? The feeling that someday they'll come for you and your children.
I feel a great swirl of pity for the poor soul that comes to my school looking for trouble.
Which is also directed by Bryan Singer, which came out in 2016. And it's a kind of, I kind of look at if this is the happy ending, Days of Future Past, I kind of consider Apocalypse the epilogue, even though it doesn't end there. The reason I say that is because of it feels like at the very end, it feels like at the very end, you could stop watching there and then go back to the original cast with like Marsden and Jackman and everything. And I'll explain as we talk about it and everything. But X-Men Apocalypse is obviously set 10 years later in the 80s, whereas the last film was in the 70s. And this film is about the X-Men, you know, kind of beginning where characters like Jean Grey show up. What are you laughing about?
I'm just laughing about what Daniel could say about this movie.
He's like preparing in the corner over there.
I'm preparing to keep a straight face.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
motherfucker.
I'm trying.
Characters like Scott Summers show up, Jean Grey, Angel, Nightcrawler. A lot of characters who are just beginning in their superhero career are showing up. And this is obviously the beginning of the franchise in a new way. You know, if Days of Future Past was a soft reboot, this is the franchise starting. So I remember watching this film, and it's very much action oriented. It's kind of the polar opposite of Days of Future Past, where they're going Hollywood blockbuster, just kind of general with it. But what were you guys thinking ahead of time when you knew Apocalypse was going to be the big bad of this film?
Well, I was excited. I thought they were gonna do a whole Age of Apocalypse type thing, and I don't know. It's funny because we're talking about the nuance that was Days of Future Past, and I feel like there was none of that in Apocalypse. Like there was no nuance in there. It was just. I mean, even Oscar Isaac looked like freaking Ivan Ooze from the Power Rangers movie. You know what I mean? Like I was like, what the hell, bro? What is this? You know what I mean? It's just so crazy. And I thought it started kind of cool. Like when they raise Apocalypse, I thought was pretty cool. Like when they show him in Egypt, I thought that was pretty cool. And isn't that how the theatrical cut ends in Days of Future Past, where they tease and Sabanur, all right?
Yeah, they show him like they show him and the Four Horsemen in the
Right.
distance.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I don't know. I was excited for it. I was excited for it. Age of Apocalypse is not the best X-Men run, but it's a cool concept that you could do a lot with, and getting that on the big screen. I thought they were gonna do, I thought there was gonna be more nuance to it, and it just really wasn't. I didn't care, I guess just because this character's so good, but Magneto was in there, and I guess the conflict kind of resided within Magneto, and he's always great. Fassbender's amazing, and especially as Magneto, I thought that was cool. But the rest of the movie, I don't know. And even the action, I thought was kind of like lackluster. I wasn't really wowed, even though there was less action in Days of Future Past. I thought the action in Days of Future Past was much better than Apocalypse. You know what I mean? We were talking about the Quicksilver scenes, and I thought those were way better. But yeah, it sucks. I think it was a missed opportunity. I think it was a missed opportunity.
Well, what about you, Angel?
For me, it's watchable. And I'm a huge Cyclops fan. I'm a huge Jean fan. So for me, I'm a sucker for most of the movie because
You're a sucker.
I I am a sucker.
Yes.
I like when they focus on the relationship in the movie. I love those scenes. I think those actors were appropriately cast. I love um I forgot the guy's name for Cyclops, but Sheridan.
Here, I'll look it up. I'll look it up right now.
Yeah, I think it's Taylor Sheridan or
Mm.
Tyler Sheridan, one of those. But I thought he was great
Yeah,
as Cyclops. The best scenes are with Michael Fassbender's
they
Magneto.
are. They are.
The scenes with
Hands
his
down.
family, when he
Hands
loses his
down.
family and he
Yeah.
kills those that killed his family, and he's
Right.
in the factory and he's like, "My name is Magneto." You know,
Right.
when they're
Right.
like, Eric, please," and he's like,
Mm.
"My name is Magneto." Those are like the best
It's
scenes in
sick.
comic book movies, you know, because
Yeah.
It's
So
Michael
sick.
Fassbender putting on an acting clinic. So it's like I can't discount this movie because for me, I think there's more good in it than there is bad, but there is bad. I mean, Daniel
Mhm.
mentioned how Oscar Isaac, not only does he look like Ooze, it just seemed like Oscar wasn't really 100% in it for the role because I don't think he was able to really emote through all that makeup and prosthetics.
Some believe that the first mutant was born thousands of years ago. He was some kind of god. I think he's going to rise again.
No, but not only that, but the suit. I heard him talking in an interview. This is years ago, but I heard him talking in an interview, and like you're saying, the suit was so crazy, it was so hot and squeaky and made a lot of noise that not only during filming he couldn't really connect with a lot of the actors because it was so hot that in between takes he had to run into like a cooling tent that they had. So
Yeah.
he wasn't like really connecting with the actors. He was just like jumping in, doing the scenes, and then like jumping back into the cooling tank because it was just so much makeup, so much stuff. And not only that, but then the suit made so much noise in production that he
Yeah.
had to go and redub over all of his lines. Every single one of his lines he had to redub somewhere else. So
That's
like that
crazy.
that has to be hard to act and emote. Like how do you emote when you're not even in the room with these guys
When
like
you're constantly being taken
responding to you?
out of the scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean,
Yeah. It
you're
yeah.
uphill battle, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I just
And
feel like
the
when you
actor's
look at
name was
something,
Ty Sheridan, by the way.
Ty
Actually.
Sheridan, thank you. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great. He's great. He's great
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
everything he's
He's
in. I
very good.
love him in Ready Player One. Great as Cyclops. He's awesome in Mud. But yeah, if you look at like how Infinity War did Thanos, and you look at the missed opportunity with Apocalypse. I mean,
Hmm.
Apocalypse is what probably the most exciting, one of the most exciting X-Men villains, and I just felt like it was kind of a miss with one of the big bads, especially because he does have the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and it's like, yeah, no, I just never
Yeah.
felt that he was all that menacing. If anything, Magneto was always more of the draw in terms of the antagonist for the X-Men.
Mhm.
Um, and another thing I loved about
Yeah.
the movie was the Quicksilver scene. I thought that was also a highlight. Not as good as the Days of Future Past, but still got me out of my seat, especially with
Still
that
really
song.
cool and
Especially with that
inventive
song.
and oh yeah, I mean it's really I love that whole idea of like taking that character and basing him around the pop culture of the decade that the movie's in and everything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dark Phoenix didn't do that. But this one I love the inventiveness of him going in the building and everything. Everything's exploding and stuff. You know, he's having a great time. You know, that's one of the characters that it's like a breath of fresh air in a movie like this, you know.
Yeah.
And it is sad because I think for most people going into the film, knowing that Apocalypse is the villain, knowing that this is pretty much the Thanos of the X-Men,
Right.
I think the idea of that was greater than the execution in the film, which is
Yes.
unfortunate because
Mhm.
he's just constantly rambling, he's constantly yelling, you know, that's making these speeches about how they're the we next step, you know, all this shit, and like you have to do something to back that up because I think the
Come, my
first like half
child.
of my child, it's
It just wasn't
uh,
hitting how they thought it was hitting. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it,
yeah,
like whoever wrote those, it's like I know that they thought they were writing some like you can tell like someone
yeah,
thought this was really dope, but someone should have
bars,
been there. Someone should
Yeah.
have been there and told them like, nah, bro, this ain't it, man. This
Bro,
ain't
but
it.
that moment when Magneto felt the earth, Yo.
Dude, dude,
Pretty fire.
dude,
Pretty
I
good.
mean,
dude.
God, like
That was the
I watch those movies for like the scenes that I know I
right,
love
right,
because it
right,
the build up to the scenes that are amazing are just
right,
spectacular, you know. But I also
right.
felt like there was a
Yeah.
missed opportunity. Like there was an emphasis on loss of family, especially with Magneto and Quicksilver, knowing that he's his son. They never do anything with that, and I felt like
Yeah.
it's set up in Days of Future Past. It's hinted at in Apocalypse, and it's just never they never do anything with it. And I felt like that was a missed opportunity, emotional for the emotional beats.
It looked like he was about to tell him. It
Yeah,
looked like Quicksilver was about to say like, "Hey, you're my dad." Because remember in the other movie, he like mentions he's like, "Hey,
my
my
mom knew
mom knew
somebody.
someone
Yeah,
that used to that could do that, and it's like, and we
Yeah.
know, like we know
yeah.
as fans, but like he doesn't know, and but then in Apocalypse, it seems like he knows, like he knows, and then at
You got
the
that
end,
idea.
he's
Yeah.
almost gonna tell him,
Yeah.
and then didn't, and but that's what I'm trying to say. It's like it's not that it was like the worst movie ever. It's just upsetting when you see all the pieces there for a great movie and then it doesn't hit you like that. You're like, ah, and then you can't say something was missing because it was all there. The actors were there, the characters that we wanted were there, the
Yep.
scenes like you're saying were there, but there was a disconnect. Like they couldn't, there was no fluidity to it. It just wasn't fluid. It's the apocalypse part seemed forced. I don't know. It just didn't. It didn't hit how I wanted it to hit, so it made it like not that great of a film. But like
Yeah.
Angel said, if you if you just like focus on the scenes that are dope, like the like from scene to scene, like
You could get
it's
through it.
not
Yeah.
trash. I mean, even the beginning when Apocalypse shows up and then like murks all the workers after Magneto kind of like exposes himself, right?
Yeah.
Like he
That was
exposes
cool.
himself by saving them. That was cool. That was like, oh
Yeah.
shoot. And then the rest of the
Yeah.
movie happens. You're like,
Sucking them down
dude,
into the
come
cement.
on.
That was
Hmm.
crazy.
Dude, that was sick. That was
I'm
sick. What
I'm
the heck? What happened to that? Like, what
I'm
the
gonna
heck
say that
happened there? They're all
yeah.
twitching, like the hands are all
Jean
like
Grey
twitching.
happened, my boy. Jean Grey.
Dude.
Yeah.
This
That
this is
that scene gave me
this is
chills. Jean walking into his mind. That's Jean Grey, bro.
That's sick.
that was pretty
Sick.
dope. I will say that this is a movie that I think does have the reason it feels like there's no fluidity is because there's just too much going on. I can't believe I'm saying
Ah,
it, but there are too many mutants in this film. Like too many mutants that are there and wasted. Like Storm is one of the horsemen, but is
wasted.
not really even a character. Psylocke is one. Angel. I think Angel is the one who got the most disrespected in the film. Honestly, like it should have just been I think it should have been characters that we had known that were taken, like with
Mhm.
Magneto.
Yes.
A
Yes.
Yeah.
character like
Yeah.
Mystique or Beast or what Mystique, Beast, senior member, Havoc. I mean, Havoc is dude. And
Yeah.
then
Where'd he go?
the young ones rise up to the occasion,
Yeah.
to become the X-Men.
Everything they built will fall!
Daniel is somewhere in the timeline. You know these X-Men timelines, they're all messed up. McAvoy or Stewart, what the hell happens? He may show up later on. I'm sure he'll pop up somewhere. Angel, where is Daniel?
He's with Apocalypse right now because Apocalypse showed up and he said, "My child," and he took him away. My child.
Speak, Speaking of which, we were talking about the cast, and I think the cast is pretty good overall with X-Men Apocalypse, with the exception, unfortunately, of Oscar Isaac. And
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with him as an actor. I love Oscar. He's one of my favorite actors of all time, and he's proved himself with comic book material since Apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
But I always pictured Apocalypse being, first of all, bigger, just a big figure, like the big
Right.
rumor now is that The Rock is going to play Apocalypse in the main MCU timeline and
That'd be
everything, which
crazy.
is that would be crazy. But were you sold on Oscar Isaac as X as I was as X-Men Apocalypse?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea when they announced that Oscar Isaac was playing Apocalypse. I mean, I was like, whoa, one of the most talented actors in age group for sure. Absolutely. I love what he's done in movies. One of my favorite performances of him is in Ex Machina. And so
Yeah.
if he was able to have better material in Apocalypse, I think X-Men Apocalypse is one of those good examples where you have a good cast, you have great characters, but the writing just doesn't match their power. So I feel like that's why all of us, you, Daniel, and I felt like it was kind of lackluster in terms of the story and yeah, just the way that Apocalypse was written. It just Oscar wasn't able to show the best of his talents.
Yeah, well, who do you think would have been a good alternative for Apocalypse in this film?
I don't know. I think maybe it would have been pretty cool if, you know, since it did take place after Days of Future Past, maybe the Sentinels evolving would have been cool, Nimrod or Prime Sentinels, or because they
Yeah.
changed the timeline, maybe that's what created the birth of Bastion, Who knows? They could have gone Terminator 2 with it and stuff like that, and a rogue Sentinel going back and trying to undo the undoing of the timeline. I'm not sure, you know, or they could have
Yeah.
gone a Brotherhood of Evil route again with Magneto, since Magneto wasn't completely with the team; he was living on his own. I don't know. Omega Red. I've always wanted to see Omega Red. Hopefully,
Oh
he's in the
man.
Wolverine game. You know, hopefully he's in the
Oh,
Wolverine game. So,
he has to be. He has
but
to
I
be.
think
Dude,
I,
Omega
I
Red.
yeah, I think they made the right choice with going with Apocalypse. Because we had seen a lot of villains. We'd seen the Sentinels. The announcement of Apocalypse, we were all losing our minds. It was just
Yeah.
like you said earlier, the execution of the character that was, faulty.
Well, I feel like in getting Apocalypse, which is a character that is mainly physical, right? Like this is definitely the action movie of this franchise. You need
Yeah,
someone with presence. Like ironically enough, someone like Dave Bautista would have been perfect, I think, as Apocalypse for
yeah.
this this film. But yeah, it's unfortunate that like how you mentioned earlier, the movie is mainly great scenes that are attached by
Mhm.
just a kind of mid watchable film, you know?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And is there a scene to you aside from the ones we've mentioned that does kind of stand out? Because there's one to me, but I want to know for you, like what's the scene in Apocalypse that does it?
Well, for me, I mentioned this earlier, but I mean, I think it is my favorite scene. I love Jean Grey so much. She
Oh
definitely is
yeah.
my second favorite female superhero of all time under Wonder Woman. Um, the scene where Charles finally convinces her to trust in her power and to kind of just let go finally, and to
Yeah.
see her embrace the Dark Phoenix within Apocalypse's mind, that had me yelling. That had me yelling for sure. Like I love that, and I love that in also Charles's mind, we see that big figure that Apocalypse becomes. He should have been like that the whole movie.
Yeah.
So to me, the mind battles were phenomenal. I love the mind battles. I love the emotional conflict between Charles and Jean, because it kind of threw us back to when they first were introduced to us in the original cast. I always love that dynamic between Professor and his ex and his students, where he tries to show them, or he tries to teach them how to hone into their powers and use them for their better good.
Yeah. That's such a great moment where she comes in to save the day because throughout the film she's like dealing with this power that's kind of taking hold of her, and then she can just kind of let loose and save the day. Um,
Yeah, and I think the
for
flashbacks with
Yeah.
her and her parents were great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pretty dope now that I think about it.
I'm
It's
telling you, like,
you're in my house now.
yeah, I'm telling you, when you watch the movie and you really focus on the scenes that are strong, like I'm in it. I'm invested in those
Hmm.
scenes. You know,
Yeah.
you could say
I
that for most of the X-Men movies that aren't as good as the best ones.
mhm.
We could talk about X-Men Origins, Wolverine. There are scenes in there that I think are really strong. You know,
Yeah. Well, it's funny you brought that up Sure.
You're like, don't bring that shit up, Angel.
I already talked about that in part one, bro.
But like
Um,
the love theme in that movie, like between Wolverine and his gal, like, how do you not feel
what was her
something?
name? What was her name?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
That chick. It's funny you bring him up because for me, this one of my favorite scenes is when my boy comes back. It
Ah,
ah, dude, that what I think that while rewatching the films and watching Apocalypse this next time, I think that at that point, that was the most unhinged Wolverine content in a film that we had gotten because he's
yeah,
like coming out of the cage, he's like butting them up, he's got the headgear on, and he's just like letting loose and everything. It's like what we were hoping we would get from something like X-Men Origins Wolverine.
yeah.
In this scene, he's an animal in that scene. And
Oh yeah,
and it's not just the violent aspect I really like about that scene, it's that he shows up in the way that Wolverine should show up sometimes, where it's not the movie's not about him, the story's not about him. He shows up as the muscle, you know, and it's like it's really cool because it feels like, oh, dude, there's the main character that I'm following most of the time. He's showing up to kind of tease. It's like seeing him from another perspective, literally.
yeah.
Which it feels really cool that like, okay, we've shifted. This does feel like a larger universe, dude. How did you feel when you saw him like going nuts and you know?
It was amazing. It was one of the best cameos ever of all time. You
Yeah.
know, we have Wolverine has been the face of the X-Men since the 2000s. You know, when they decided to put him as the face of the team. You know, but I loved how they reintroduced him here for like a new generation to kind of showcase that he is part of the team. This is a team, and yeah, I just love that it was comic accurate to the Weapon X. That helmet that he had on, the long hair. He just yeah, he looked like a beast. He was an animal. He was the Wolverine. You know,
Oh,
I loved
dude.
it. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Hugh always gives it 150%, and that's what makes me even more excited for Deadpool and Wolverine too, because now that he finally has the classic suit on, I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine could be the best portrayal of Wolverine we've seen yet, and we've seen a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a legacy at this point. And
Yeah,
I love that this was our kind of our last time seeing him until Logan, you know? So
right.
it was interesting to see at the almost at the very end of Hugh Jackman portraying the character. It was we're seeing the beginning pretty much, and then we're seeing the end with Logan. You know, it's an interesting,
Mhm.
and then there's just a whole middle space of like what happened, you know, between there, you know?
Right,
Um,
right,
but that kind of helps at least me look at this film as kind of the epilogue of the X-Men franchise, and that okay, so after that scene, Wolverine goes off, and then you know where he's ending up, right? He ends up with the
right,
X-Men, and then at the end, the team is formed where they get their costumes, and it's like, okay, now they're on their way to becoming the characters we know, and you know, Magneto and Professor X are on their sides again at the very
right.
end, you know. Did you feel that kind of final sense with the film while watching, or is it just like, okay, well, we're starting over pretty much?
Yeah, no, it felt like the end. It felt like the beginning, all in one. You know, I thought they did a really good job of showing us the end of the original cast in Days of Future Past, and then showing us the end of the rebooted cast, but also like a new beginning for them because we know that they end up where Days of Future Past ends with the happy
Yeah.
ending. So it was really cool. I thought it was really cool. We didn't know we were gonna get Logan at that point, so at that point we were like, wait, we're seeing their amazing costumes. Please
Yeah,
don't let this be the end. Um, and then we got Dark Phoenix.
right. Well, before we talk about that film, uh, the costumes did look pretty lit, I gotta
Oh,
say.
they
I
were
mean,
they were amazing. They were amazing. We were all like, no, please don't end here. You just put on the amazing costumes.
the end. Seriously, the end of the film. Dude,
Mystique saying,
Cyclops'
"You're
costume?
X-Men."
Oh yeah, see, that's where I'm like, all right.
Yeah,
All right, bruh.
yeah. No, Cyclops' costume was Heat.
It was the heat of the moment. I was in heat.
Yeah. In
Um,
heat.
yeah. Yeah, X-Men Apocalypse, a perfectly watchable film, you know, compared to some of the others that come out. And
Yeah.
some fun parts of it, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.